Hi everyone, welcome to Careers in Finance podcast session number 4. Today we will have Parv with us, who is our Finbridge Program graduate, and he's an investment banker today with approximately 2.5 years of work experience. And as I've been literally tired commenting in the comment section that yes, we would be conducting a session on investment banking very soon. So today we have all the opportunity and we'll try our level best to guide all the youngsters of the country on how to make a very solid career in investment banking. With that, let me have Perv, and I will allow Perv to speak a lot on the domain. So just an introduction. Perv started his journey into investment banking at the age of 18. It sounds ridiculous to hear at the first instance, but that's an absolute correct fact. He entered the domain investment banking as a trainee, and he was one of the few to then convert it into a full-time role. So from right there, Parv, I would like to pick it up, right? Okay, when you started at such a young age, it's very rare. We have been training people for 10, 11 years now. In Mumbai, it's approximately 23, 24 years now. It's a rarity. It's a rarity to enter such a reputed domain at such a young age. So, and again, it was not just an operation role. For a lot of students, investment banking is a very big domain, correct? It was not an
Correct.
operation role where anyone can enter. It was a ECM division, which is one of the major divisions into investment banking. So, how was your feeling? How did you cater to it?
Sure, sir. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I mean, at first, everything was very new and exciting, slightly intimidating as well.
Okay,
Okay, I was working with people who had years, sometimes even decades of experience. Right, I
okay,
was working with senior bankers, lawyers,
okay,
auditors, and very big business owners, promoters. Right.
okay,
And I think the most exciting part for me was the exposure, right? Very early on, I got the opportunity to work on actual transactions. I was
okay,
building financial models of companies. I was
okay,
making information memorandums for real businesses and
okay,
seeing firsthand how these transactions are executed behind the scenes.
okay. And all this you were doing at that age, 18, 19.
Yes, sir.
So, उस point of time पे, how were you able to absorb the pressure? Because at such a young age, you know, collaborating and working under guidances of such senior, sophisticated people, at that point of time, your boss pressure to aata hoga, correct? And in the end,
Yes,
it's
sir.
investment banking, it's capital raising. You decide the future of a company, correct? So, उस point of time पे, what was the challenging or exciting domain? And I'm just talking about that entry, initial 3, 4 months.
Sure, sir. So I think the initial first few weeks for me were majorly about understanding how the transactions move from start to finish. Like I
Oh,
was supporting the team on different parts of the transaction while my seniors walked me through the entire process.
okay,
But I think in investment banking, the learning curve is very steep.
okay,
Uh, Almost by the second month, I think I was, working on important parts of the transaction, like supporting the team, obviously. But over time, I gradually owned certain parts of transactions. And I
okay,
think the most challenging part for me in this entire initial journey was understanding how execution driven ECM really is. Like, there's
okay,
very little margin for error. You're
okay,
constantly coordinating with regulators like SEBI and stock exchanges. And since
okay,
an IPO can be run for months and sometimes more than a year, you need to stay extremely detail oriented. I
okay,
think that is a very important part of being into investment banking. That
okay,
detail orientation and eye for detail is something that a lot of people miss. And the
okay,
most exciting part for me, like I said, was I got the opportunity to interact with top law firms and top auditors of the country. I was
okay,
working with promoters who were running businesses worth thousands of crores. I was sitting in meetings with these people who had built such companies, and I was involved in discussions and decision making at that age. It teaches you a lot beyond finance. It changes the way you think, communicate, and handle responsibility.
So if I ask you just one off the book question here, right? That 18-19 साल की उम्र में you are sitting in front of a promoter who has built a business worth crores, correct? And as an investment banking, analyst, you need to recommend him few of the things that he will have to do in his own business, right? In order to cater to right set of valuation that the market will award them, correct? Boss, this is a very, very tricky situation. See, if someone
Yes.
with, 10, 20 years of experience would speak, the promoter would still give a ear to it, right? But at such a young age, how could you contribute your points to the entirety? That might be a
So
very unique thing for everyone to learn.
So I think initially ये problem होता है कि that you're just 18, you look so young in front of all these people, and
Correct.
there might be a time when you're not taken very seriously, right?
Correct.
But eventually, when you're working and your work is trusted, when you're repeatedly giving your all and showing results, तभी वो problem धीरे धीरे चला जाता है. Then
Oh,
people start trusting your work. This happened, this still today it happens to me with new clients that I'm
okay.
sitting with them. I'm trying to tell them कि sir ये process में ये होता है. The next steps are these. We are going to reach out to these types of investors and whatnot. Right?
Correct.
ऐसे situation में at the beginning they'll be like, yeah, this guy looks very young. I don't think he knows a lot. Let
Correct.
me talk to his boss. And then my boss will reassure him that you are in the right hands and you don't need to worry. And gradually वो trust धीरे धीरे हर एक client में build up हो ही जाता है.
Build up हो जाता है. Okay, ठीक है. Fantastic. I think this is an excellent start to our discussion. But let me go like one step back there before you enter investment banking, correct? So I have few very important set of questions right in front of me. So the first thing that I would like to ask is that you were a 12th pass out, right? A 12th pass out का decide करने ना life में at such a young tender age कि बहुत investment banking is something I want to target, correct? It's such a difficult industry with such high entry barrier, such rigorous set of interviews, application process, and it is in the end dream of every young candidate today. किसी को कुछ पता हो कि नहीं
Correct.
पता हो, people like मेरे को investment banker बनना है. So the competition to enter that industry is so high. So right after 12th, along with undergraduation at such a young age, how did you manage to crack a company and start building your career? Because that is what in the end everyone wants to do.
So I'll take a step even backwards, So
Okay.
I did not originally plan to become an investment banker or pursue finance professionally. I
Okay.
wanted to join my family business. It was
Okay.
only around my 12th boards when I was exploring my options and I
Okay.
came across CFA. But I
Okay.
think at that time, the minimum requirement to give your level one exam was you need to complete your second years of graduation, right?
That okay.
That meant I had a good 2 years before I could even appear for the exam.
Correct.
So I went to one of my mentors and he suggested that I should look into Finbridge program.
Okay.
So naturally I took a seminar
Okay.
and what really stood out to me right after that seminar was Shailesh sir told us, and he was trying to tell us that what they are going to teach is
Oh,
something that we are going to apply on a daily basis when we were going to work in the industry. So after doing my due diligence on the same, I joined the program,
okay.
and I think that was one of the best decisions I've ever made. Mainly because I think I was not a very accounts student, I would say. So I always used to think कि I don't think मेरे से हो पाएगा नहीं हो पाएगा वैसे. So we started from very basics, like from understanding financial statements, then connecting those numbers with the business models, understanding different types of complex business models, and eventually उनके ऊपर financial models बनाना based on our own assumptions and industry understanding, right?
Correct.
And to value these businesses. The entire program taught us everything that I think we needed to know as a fresher who wanted to enter the industry.
Correct.
Also, just a point that I want to highlight is the program has a speculative module also, in which you guys teach investment banking and private equity aspects of the industry as well. So this again widens the scope of work for the candidate who's passing the program.
Correct.
But I think right after the program, like just when I passed the program, I
Okay.
realized that the technical knowledge alone was not enough. Like
Correct.
if a 18-year-old kid or anyone wants to enter a core finance role, specifically investment banking, the interview process is rigorous. I think the technical knowledge is necessary, but I think the confidence, the communication skills, and the ability to articulate yourself properly in those interviews is very important, because ultimately, the firm, any firm who's hiring a 18-year-old kid, they need to trust whether you can handle such responsibilities in a professional environment.
Okay.
राइट सो ऑनेस्टली वो इंटरव्यू प्रोसेस जो होता है वो बहुत ही ज्यादा रिगरस होता है. मल्टीपल राउंड्स होते हैं, असाइनमेंट्स होते हैं, टेक्निकल इंटरव्यूज होते हैं, केस स्टडीज देते हैं, 4 राउंड्स होते हैं. एंड ईच एंड एवरी वन ऑफ दीज स्टेजेस they try to test a different aspect in you, right? In investment banking, they are not just evaluating your technical knowledge. They are also judging how you think under pressure, how you communicate, your attention to detail, and how confident you are while handling difficult situation. And
Correct.
a choti si mistake slip up can can make them question your preparedness and confidence, because the industry itself is very high stakes. And
Correct.
I think that's another area where Finacle helped me a lot. From mock interviews, communication better करने के लिए, confidence building, they genuinely helped me prepare for the process just beyond technical concepts. And that combination of the entire technical knowledge and interview readiness helped me crack into investment banking at such a young age.
So, first of all, I'm so happy today when you are speaking about communication, articulating your points to the point. अपने बच्चे को इस स्टेज पे देख के there's a feeling that it's very difficult to summarize in words, because yes, you are articulating everything to the point perfectly. बस एक चीज मैं यहाँ पे पुट अप करना चाहूंगा कि I think you were from Finbridge 22 batch, correct? You may have
Yes,
graduated in, I think, September, October 23, post 18 months of classroom training, right?
correct.
And I know the passing rates come out to be around 20-25%, right? One in four or five candidates clear the program. So this is question for someone who are pursuing the program right now, correct? What do you think you and your colleagues who cleared the program did differently than people who could not?
So, first and the most important thing I think that is important if you need to clear the program is studying groups. Like I
Oh,
know that when I was studying with a bunch of people who are right now working in the industry in very well-known firms right now, be it portfolio management, venture capital, private equity, everywhere. They're working across the industry, and one thing we all had in common, I think, is we were helping each other out. Whenever
okay,
I was getting stuck somewhere, they were there to help me, and the other way around, right?
okay,
And second is, you need to put in the time and effort, right? It's like काफी बार ये होता है कि students will give up because they are not trying hard enough, कि they are not trying to put take that thing that they were taught in class and apply it themselves on real companies or something like that. For example, when you were teaching us business analysis and we were trying to understand how to understand business model of a company, what we used to do is we used to go home, open our laptops, open screener, and look for companies, and then we would try to understand their products, their value chain, where they are present in the entire industry value chain, things like that. So I think that is something that sets apart people who pass the program and people who don't clear the program.
I still remember your group. I think you, Rishali, Sanyam, correct? You all used to
Yeah.
bring so many extra case studies over and above that you used to practice in the lecture room. That that now I can recollect. That were few of the indications that you guys were literally trying to absorb as much as possible during the program. And if anyone who is pursuing the program is listening to it, please adhere to the advice that Parva has given you right now. It will genuinely help you a lot. Okay. Now let's proceed towards the second stage of our communication, right? ठीक है, you cleared the program, you worked hard, you were trained rigorously for interview, you cracked the interview, correct? You intern Anand Rathi, correct? One of a major names in the oil banking domain, right? They picked you up at an industrial training in the division. Now, ठीक है, although they picked you up as an industrial trainee, the institute takes care of pre-placement offer, but that depends on your work that you do, correct?
Correct.
And Anand Rathi, as far as I know, they have such a rigorous training to full-time conversion process that only best of the best rare people are offered pre-placement offer, the candidates who join as a trainee. And I think you were among those chosen few, right? So how was that
Correct.
process? What do you think students or candidates need to do right during the industrial training phase? Because the majority of investment banking structures that I have seen, right from a boutique I bank till a JP Morgan, right, a multinational, everyone runs that funda. Join as a trainee or in an analyst program for 1 2 year. They grill you, they try you out, and then the best of the best, they convert into a full-time analyst or an associate role on a permanent payroll. That is broad
Correct.
structure of investment banking. So yeah, how could you do that? And you were 19 by the time तेरा industrial training खत्म हुआ होगा तो 19 साढ़े 19 साल का हुआ होगा, correct?
Correct.
So how did you work? What did you do correct? What would you advise during this phase? Yeah, what was the magic that you did? कि Anand Rathi trusted such a young talent for a full-time role.
So first of all, sir, very accurate. Like any investment bank you firm you go to, they have the exact same program. If you're a undergrad, graduate student, person, they'll hire you as an intern. They'll grill you throughout, and that grilling process is, I think, the most important part. Like that is the that portion of your professional journey is very important because that is when you're learning, you're working, you're applying things in practical life, and I think interest matters a lot. When you're interested, when you are when you are interested in the work you're doing, you're putting more efforts. And you're putting efforts consistently. And I think what helped me getting converted into a full-time analyst was this only that I was working uh, like days and nights. I think I was working more hours than people around me. I was ready to volunteer to take up more work. I made sure that whatever I was doing, I was doing it at the best I could,
Okay.
right? And like you said, that it's a very competitive place. So everyone is, fighting at a very high level. At
Okay.
that time you need to put in the effort, you need to work for more hours because again investment banking is very execution heavy, so putting in hours is very important. So when you
Okay.
put in those
Can you define these two things? You have used execution heavy, I think, twice or thrice till now. So what do you mean by it is execution heavy? And I want you to actually explain the word grill because I know the kind of
okay.
grilling that you have done. I still remember our calls at night 2 a.m., at morning 7 a.m. So expand the grill because what I want this generation today to understand, एक सपना बनाना, मेरे को इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकिंग में जाना है और वो सपने को पाने के लिए कीमत चुकाना, उसमें जमीन
Correct.
आसमान का फर्क होता है. पीपल सो कामली सिट एंड ऑब्जर्व, यार मैंने वो नेटफ्लिक्स पे सीरीज देखा, इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकर बनना है, करेक्ट. यार आई एम अहमदाबाद का टॉप ग्रेजुएट इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकर बन के 50 लाख करोड़ कमाता है, मेरे को भी करना है, करेक्ट. No one talks about the grill that you have spoken. Okay, how grilling investment banking is. So define grill slightly for everyone. So
uh,
and the execution heavy part.
okay, so I think both are intertwined. So I'll
Okay.
take up the grilling part first.
Okay.
So when I say they grill you, I mean you're going to be in office for 12, 14, 16, 18 hours a day. Like when the deal is running hot and running, you're going to be in office because the timeline does not change. You have to adjust everything in the timeline you're given.
हाँ,
Uh,
अगर
uh,
IPO आना है 2 महीने बाद तो आना ही. If
Correct.
that
If the markets are good, if the conditions are good, if the narrative in the market is very good, you need to make sure that that timeline is achieved. You cannot say that this cannot happen in this time frame,
Correct.
and the IPO can wait, because by the time you are taking it leniently and that timeline goes away, the markets have a totally different perspective of the company and in general capital markets, right?
Correct.
So at that time, I don't think anyone had the audacity to say ki I won't be able to do this or this won't happen. You sit in the office throughout the night,
Correct.
and you complete whatever is given to you. The special. Okay, I'll start a bit with what ECM really is. So ECM is when you raise money through public equity, equity capital markets, right?
Okay. Okay.
So this is a very long and stringent process.
Okay.
In this process, you are coordinating with auditors, lawyers, promoters, SEBI, stock exchanges, and there's no margin for error, right? So whatever you're doing, and in such a long process, months and maybe sometimes more than a year, in
Uh,
such a time frame, uh, the activities that happen, they need
okay.
to happen in a certain way and in a certain timeline. And if
Okay.
that doesn't happen, then you're the scapegoat,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So you need to make sure that if you want that full-time analyst role, you want to grow in the corporate ladder, you want to become an associate, a VP, a director in an investment banking firm, you need to make sure that at the initial phase, everyone around you knows that you can take up the work. You can once you have taken up the work, you can complete the work in a timely manner and in the right manner. So I think
Correct.
that is the grilling part. वो टाइम देना और वो पूरे प्रोसेस को समझना, समझ के हर एक चीज को करना, दैट इज द ग्रिलिंग. एंड बाय एग्जीक्यूशन हेवी, आई मीन,
Correct.
for any person who wants to get into investment banking and ECM. So I'll explain कि क्या होता है. You are making financial models, you're making pitch decks, you're making information memorandums. These are all documents that you make for a company to present in front of an investor. So ये सारे documents बनाना. In case of an IPO, there's a thing called draft red herring prospectus that you file with SEBI in order to go for an IPO, right?
Correct.
And that document will include A to Z history of the company, what you have done, what you're doing, what are your future plans, the industry you belong in. All of this has to be covered in that 400, 500 page document, and there cannot be one single mistake in that.
Correct.
So by execution heavy, I mean drafting all these things, making
Correct.
sure everything is accurate, and
Correct.
adhering to the timelines again. So this is what execution heavy means in investment banking.
Okay. So on the execution front, so one thing I understood that you did a lot of grilling. Your attitude was perfectly fine, but you must have done something more additional than other candidates, correct? On the technical front, that made the company trust you out of every other. So, what were the technical aspect that you think you did perfectly right during your test and training phase?
So I think that that's a very good question. The viewers must know this. That it started right from Finnacle. We were being taught that you need to be updated about what's happening around the country, what's happening in the industry, and what's happening in different industries, right?
Correct. Correct.
So I have a framework, like not a, very stringent framework, but I like to keep a track of things. Like I'll read about deals that are happening in the country. There are
Oh,
platforms like Traction, VCC Edge. There are
correct.
news forums like Ntracker. These are
Correct.
very good platforms where you can read about the deal activity which is happening in the country. Right.
Correct.
So any private deal that happens, you are notified of it. You can study about it more, like what industry does it belong to, what was the size of the fundraise.
Correct.
Does the company have a background of raising funds? Who was the investor who put in the money? These are all very important things because eventually you are also someday going to come across a company जो
Correct.
आपका client होगा, जिसको similar industry में होगा, उसको fundraise करना होगा. तो you will
Correct.
have a industry knowledge कि
Correct.
मुझे इस टाइप के इन्वेस्टर्स को रीच आउट करना है, एंड दिस इज द टाइप ऑफ इक्विटी स्टोरी आई विल बी लुकिंग एट, राइट?
Correct. Correct.
So that is one thing. Second is, keep track of capital markets, right? You keep a track of DRHPs that are being filed with SEBI,
Okay.
DRHPs that are getting approved, rejected by SEBI, right?
Okay.
So you read about who the banker is, you read
Okay.
about what the business is of the company who's coming for an IPO, you read
Okay.
about the IPO size, you read about the valuation it's coming at versus what valuation is being given to the listed peers of the company,
Okay.
right?
Correct. Correct.
All of this is again, it start all of this when you do all of this for a year, year and a half, 2 years. It starts making sense when you're applying it. When you're
Okay.
at that stage in your career, when you are handling conversations with stakeholders yourself,
Correct.
that is when all of these will help because you will
Correct.
be informed. You won't be fooled by anyone, and nobody will be able to tell you that you don't know this,
Correct.
right? It is very important.
So इतना सब करना पड़ता है to become an analyst. Correct.
सर इतना सब नहीं होता. I think it's a very small part of your day. You
Okay.
open your laptop before opening your mailbox. You
Okay.
open these websites for 10-15 minutes and you read
Okay.
about everything. That's
Okay.
it.
Okay. But so it's about regularity of doing
Correct.
things consistently.
Correct.
Okay. ठीक है. Fair enough. ठीक है. समझा. So when your role changed from trainee to a full-time analyst, correct? तो ये हर आई बैंकिंग एंथुजियास्ट को भी अब पता होगा कि ट्रेनी पीरियड में क्या करना होता है. अब आते फुल टाइम एनालिस्ट के रोल पे. सो व्हेन यू वर कन्वर्टेड इनटू अ फुल टाइम एनालिस्ट, राइट? हाउ डिड योर जॉब रोल चेंज एंड व्हाट रिस्पांसिबिलिटीज additionally were put on you?
Okay, so when you're an industrial trainee and intern at an investment banking firm, you are mainly supporting the team, right?
Correct.
You are trying to understand how things work because when you are going to be given these tasks, you'll be able to do them smoothly, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
essentially, when you are a full-time analyst,
Okay.
what changes? Again, the timelines get stricter, the pressure becomes higher,
Correct.
you're working more directly with stakeholders, right? Uh, as an industrial trainee, you do get the opportunity to interact with
Correct.
stakeholders, but it intensifies when you're an analyst and above, right?
Correct.
Your role evolves to more relationship driven, right? So
Okay.
you're talking to more people,
Okay.
you're managing their queries. So when you're going for a fundraise, any client will have a billion queries, right?
Correct.
They'll ask you very small questions, very difficult questions, different types of questions that you have not encountered before. You are
Correct.
trying to answer them in a way that you're advising them. Essentially, you're advising them, and that advice cannot go wrong, right?
Correct. Correct.
So that is something that changes. What also changes is you're responsible for more part of the transaction, right?
Okay.
From a IPO point of view, let's say when you were a industrial trainee, you were focusing on certain parts of the transaction. Now
Correct.
you have a wider scope. You are working on almost the entire deal process. You
Okay.
are starting from drafting the DRHP to submitting it to the exchange and SEBI, then replying to their observations,
Okay.
and eventually when you're going for the IPO, coordinating with investors, participation in the retail roadshows and press conferences. All of these activities intensify, and the role becomes a bit more interesting at the same time, intimidating, I would say.
Okay. Correct. Because yes, there are performance pressures, right?
Correct.
Excellent. I think the viewers would have got a complete, authentic, in-depth insight because investment banking is such a domain. Because सबको यहाँ पे जाना है, हर बंदा इसके ऊपर ब्लॉग लिखता है. एंड दोज आर सो जनरिक गूगल ओरिएंटेड ब्लॉग यूएस से ले लेके लिख दिए गए हैं. एंड बस इंडिया के इंडस्ट्री वो आई बैंकिंग का वैसे चलता ही नहीं. How it has been written,
Correct.
online. So thank you so much, Parva, for taking the viewers and students. Now we'll go towards slightly technical part, which will consume your time, but it will help the investment banking enthusiasts a lot. Like you worked in ECM division, correct? Of
Correct.
iBank. I still remember the campus placements of your batch. कई बच्चे कॉर्पोरेट फाइनेंस वर्टिकल में गए थे इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकिंग में. some went into valuation advisory department of investment bank. आप ECM में गए थे. I think two candidates I remember went into the M&A transaction side into
Correct.
I bank. So ये सब डिपार्टमेंट बहुत ह्यूज हो जाते हैं. पीपल जस्ट नो इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकिंग. अब इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंक
Correct.
में से ऑपरेशन लॉ भी आता है, बट दैट इज नॉट स्ट्रिक्टली फाइनेंस, तो ऑपरेशन लॉ को साइड पे रख देते हैं. इफ यू टॉक अबाउट द मेन वर्टिकल्स ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकिंग, कैन यू हेल्प स्टूडेंट्स अंडरस्टैंड बेटा बेस्ड ऑन योर एक्सपीरियंस कि टोटल इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकिंग के अलग अलग डिपार्टमेंट में क्या क्या काम होता है और कैसे रूल्स चलते हैं?
Sure, sir. So I'll start from very basic what investment banking is, right? If I have to explain it to someone very simply, I'll say, suppose a company wants to plan a capex, a huge capex, right? They want to acquire another company,
ओके.
or they are looking to, raise debt from the markets,
ओके.
right? You need a advisor,
ठीक
right?
है.
An advisor who understands the markets,
ओके.
investors, regulations around fundraising,
ओके.
negotiations, and everything like strategy planning and all. That
ओके.
person is an investment banker. You hire an investment banking firm, and
ओके.
they'll drive the process for you.
ओके.
Correct.
ओके.
So when people say different terms like ECM, corporate finance, private equity, M&A advisory, these are terms that are used by different firms slightly differently. But I
ओके.
think broadly, if you categorize the work in investment banking, I would say they fall into 4 or 5 categories, right? So
ओके.
I'll start with ECM, right? Equity capital markets. Like I said, equity capital markets is when you raise capital through public equity.
ओके.
You're raising money from retail investors, institutional investors, and
ओके.
your stock is going to trade on a stock exchange on a daily basis, right?
Basically, all the IPOs, follow-on public offer, QIPs,
Correct.
come into ECM division.
Okay, so this will include, yes, all your fresh capital raises. So when you're first time entering into the market, it's called an IPO, initial public offering. Then you go into follow-on public raising. These are QIPs.
Uh,
There are block deals as well, in which promoters will take a certain part of exit to safeguard their wealth and family, right? That is something which has also taken a lot of traction in the Indian markets in the recent years.
yes, I
Right.
was
So let's say there's a Nykaa, Zomato, Bharat Cooking Coal Limited. These are some IPOs that the viewers might know. So these
correct.
are the companies who went for an IPO. Then
So
let's
this
say there's Reliance who
is
want.
the ECM division.
Correct. This is the ECM division.
Oh,
Then
okay.
I would say adjacent to ECM division, there's debt capital markets, DCM.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
simply instead of diluting your equity, you're raising funds to debt. So
Oh,
you'll be repaying the amount and you'll be paying a certain amount of interest on it. So let's say
okay.
Reliance is planning a capex and it does not want to dilute its equity. And there are
Okay.
certain different scenarios in which a company would like to go for a debt raise instead of an equity raise. They'll go for they'll issue bonds to public or to
Okay.
banks.
Okay.
So this is how you are raising money through debt, right?
Oh,
Then
okay.
I would say what people find a lot lucrative and the face of investment banking, your
Correct.
private equity mergers and acquisitions and deal advisory part of the investment banking.
Correct.
So
Correct.
when I say mergers and acquisitions, essentially when one company wants to acquire another company or once there are two companies who wants to get merged, which is
Okay.
going to benefit them both in terms
Okay.
of business synergy, valuations and whatnot. So
Correct.
this is where this is where two investment banks will come to play. There will be
Okay.
a sell side M&A advisor and there will be a buy side M&A advisor. These
Okay.
guys will negotiate on behalf of both the parties.
Can,
And
can, can you differentiate between a sell side iBank and a buy side M&A advisor?
sure, so I think this will take a little bit more time, but it's very interesting. So let's
Thank you.
say I'm a client, you're an investment banker. I come to you, I say, okay, I have 100 crore in my reserves and I can manage some more with that. I'm going to acquire another company in my industry to, integrate myself into the value chain more. For
Okay.
let's say, for example, and
Be,
sorry,
be, or increase the market share by acquiring a
yeah,
company.
fair.
And take care.
There can
Okay.
be multiple reasons to go for a merger and an acquisition, but I'm just giving you an example that let's say I come to you. So, as a buy side investment banker, you
Okay.
will be looking for acquiring companies for me. You will
Okay.
find suitable companies for me. You will drive the negotiations for me. You
Okay.
will help me with the valuation that I'll be giving to that business,
Okay.
and the right business that I need to acquire in order to get the most benefit for my
Okay.
company, right? And
Okay.
let's say I'm a company, I'm a business owner who wants to sell my company, who wants the company to go on, but I don't want to run the business anymore. Let's say this is just an example again. I'll hire an investment banker. Let's say again you will be a sell side investment banker, and you will find acquirers,
Okay.
buyers for my company,
Okay.
and try to find the best price for my company,
Okay.
such that my wealth is maximized and all the stakeholders of the company's wealth is maximized.
Okay. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Beta, for the
So
explanation.
this
Thanks
will
for
be your mergers and acquisitions and deal advisory, and then you come into private equity. So
okay.
private equity is a term that we use in investment banking.
Okay.
This is where any private company, a startup, anyone who wants to raise funds will go
Okay.
to an investment banker, and based on the stage of the company, right?
Okay.
Let's say the company is at a scale of 50, 80, 100 crores revenue,
Okay.
right? You
Correct.
and you're expecting, let's say, a valuation of 200, 300, 400 crores. I'm just
Okay.
giving an example. I'll be going to late stage venture capital funds and
Okay.
early stage PE funds, right?
Okay.
And let's
Correct.
say I'm raising funds for a company who's a 10,000 crore revenue scale, and I'm looking at a valuation of thousands of crores, billions of dollars. I'll be
Correct.
going to a growth stage, late stage, exit stage PE, private equity firm, right?
Correct.
So based on a company and its stage and its requirement, you source different types of investors,
Okay.
and you negotiate the best valuation for the company and the
Okay.
investor, such that there's something on the table for the investors as well, right?
Okay.
That is
Okay.
also a very important point, that you
Correct.
need to leave some interest for the investor to invest in, right?
Okay. Correct.
That is private equity. And
Okay.
I think your all your mid end and back end roles will be your valuations and all, right? When you will be hired as a third party valuation agency by
Correct.
a investment banker or a merchant banker, they'll hire you. You will be making financial models and other collaterals for a company,
Correct.
and you'll be paid a certain portion of the fees, or a fixed amount in such a way.
Okay. So broadly speaking, there is ECM, DCM, then you have M&A deal advisory, then you have corporate finance, aka private equity, and then you have the valuation advisory.
Correct.
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 Anything that remains in investment banking?
So I think every firm, like no matter whichever of these types of deals that the investment bank is doing, every firm will again be divided into two or three parts, right?
Shala.
So based on what type of work, what type of people will do, right? So starting from deal origination, right? This is all your senior bankers and directors of the investment banking firm. They will be the one who are bringing in the revenue for the business. They are sourcing deals.
Correct.
These guys have to build extreme networks. Like
Correct.
they are deeply rooted in the industry, well-known people. They'll be they'll be knowing investors, consultancy firms, law firms, auditors, and whatnot. Because यहाँ से deal sourcing होता
They would
है.
have built all the network through decades of experience.
Correct,
Skill. If
correct.
anyone
So
wants to raise money, or if they think a company can be sold, they would be first of the few people who will understand that immediately. Correct?
correct, correct. That is their role. And then comes your execution role, right?
Okay.
This is where all your analysts, associates, and VPs come, right? This is where you spend a lot of your time. This
Okay.
is where you are executing the transactions that are brought into the firm. You
Okay.
are coordinating with all the stakeholders, running the transaction behind the scenes and everything. And then
Okay.
there are back-end roles as well,
Okay.
which are operations role and all, जो backend काम संभालते हैं, your data registry and all for the
Okay.
investment banking firm.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
ठीक है. Excellent. Now I think the entire layer of iBanking is clear. So, so per now, let me take a slightly detour. I would like to ask my last question here only, because you explained a lot about various verticals into investment banking, right? So now my point is, earlier you were into the ECM division and Anand. Now you have moved to Kummat Advisors, and I think you are doing a very broad spectrum of work there, right from M&A, deal advisory to private equity, correct? So how has your role evolved as an analyst and associate
Yes.
from Anand Rathi to Kummat Advisors? That will be my first part. Second is, as you are growing in your career, what are some of the crucial developments that you are seeing in the investment banking industry today? And the final part, as you mentioned earlier, that as you grow, the importance of networking in investment banking is huge, because that's the entire work of sourcing deal segment, right? So what you today at a young age, what you have started developing on your network side. So if you can highlight these things now, Paul.
Sure, sir. So, like you said, I'm currently an associate at Combat Advisors. Here we
Okay.
work across private equity transactions, M&A deals, IPO
Oh,
advisory mandates. And IPO
okay.
specifically, we act as an advisor to the client throughout the entire IPO transaction process. So
Okay.
I think apart from execution, what has changed in my role is that there's so much more involvement in strategic discussions, client interactions,
Okay.
understanding business models deeply, and working closely with promoters and investors. Right.
Okay.
So in larger firms, sometimes I think your role becomes slightly more specialized. Whereas in a
Okay.
mid-market setup, you get exposure across multiple deal aspects, and
Okay.
that accelerates your growth a lot, right? तुम ज्यादा सीख पाते हो in an environment जहाँ पे तुम्हें exposure throughout the deal cycle ज्यादा मिलता है. So I
Okay.
think that is something which has significantly changed in my role from when I
Okay.
was in Anand Rathi.
Yeah.
And like you said, networking is a very important part of investment banking. And
Correct.
I think um, because investment banking is such a relationship driven industry, um, you need to know people, you need to know the right set of people. So
Okay.
over the years, I've learned that you need to meet new people in the industry. Um
Okay.
and you need to maintain long-term relationships with them. So
Oh,
I'll highlight both of those things right now. So what I try to
okay.
do is I try to meet three or five people every week or two. These
Oh,
people will be, chartered accountants, MBAs, consultants, lawyers, and business owners also. So the
okay.
idea is not to sell immediately, but to build a
Okay.
long-term relationship and stay connected with the ecosystem, right? You
Okay.
are not just meeting these people, you need to stay in touch with them in the long run, right? How you
Okay.
do it, you ask. You keep them in loop about what type of deals you are running, right? You don't tell
Okay.
them in sensitive information, obviously, but you keep
Yep.
them informed about the type of work you and your firm is doing.
Okay.
You also try to discuss your macro point of views with them, and they'll do the same with you.
Okay.
You will try to meet new people over networking events. And when you meet
Okay.
these people, you'll try to set up follow-up meetings with them.
Okay.
Every now and then you come across a interesting piece of article or a blog or a type of deal that is happening, right? You
Okay.
will try to send it to them. You will discuss it with them. This helps build a foundation. And
Okay.
a lot of good deals actually originate through these networks, because these are
Okay.
the professionals who usually are the first people to know when a company is exploring fundraisers or acquisitions or an IPO. So over time,
Correct.
consistently building genuine relationships becomes extremely valuable in this industry, because ultimately, if you want to go to the deal origination front of the industry, the
Right.
networking helps you a lot.
Okay.
And you also asked what are some current developments that are happening in the investment banking setup in India. I would like to highlight in India right now, right? So
Yeah.
I would like to speak of some numbers that India has become a major IPO market globally. In last
Okay.
calendar year 2025 alone, the country saw approximately 350 plus 370 something IPOs
Okay.
across main board and SMEs. right? They
Okay.
raised nearly 1.95 lakh crore rupees from
Okay.
the markets. What's
Oh,
interesting is that this growth is no longer limited to large corporates. SME
okay.
IPOs have surged with over 250 listings in last calendar year itself. From
Okay.
an investment banking point of view, there are three developments that I would like to highlight. First
Okay.
is private equity backed IPOs. This shows like around 35% of IPOs in the FY26 period were
Okay.
PE backed. This shows
Oh,
that IPOs have become a preferred exit route for investors. So,
okay.
what I mean by a private equity backed IPO is a company which was previously invested by a private equity firm, and that
Okay.
private equity firm is taking an exit through
Oh,
an OFS in the IPO, offer for sale,
okay.
right?
Okay.
Second,
Got it.
markets are now rewarding profitability over just growth, right?
Oh,
Investors are more focused on governance, cash flows, and sustainable earnings, right? Rather
okay.
than giving aggressive valuations. And
Correct.
third, Indian capital markets are becoming more domestic driven. In
Okay.
the last, I would say, few years, 5, 7 years, the
Okay.
investment in mutual funds, retail investors themselves investing in the capital markets, and
Correct.
domestic institutions, investment scope. These things have
Correct.
increased a lot, and it's playing a very big role in funding IPOs, and it's
True.
reducing dependency on foreign capital a lot. And
Okay.
one more thing that I would like to highlight is a lot of promoters still don't realize that if they plan their businesses very smartly for the, let's say,
Correct.
next 2, 3 years, even an
Correct.
SME IPO can become a very strong growth opportunity for them. So I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a company who's doing a revenue scale of 30, 40 odd crores, and they
Correct.
are generating a PAT of 5, 10 crores. Uh, right? And they operate in a high growth sunrise industry. And
Okay.
let's say that business is being valued, that type of business is being valued at, let's say, 20 times earnings. Suddenly,
Okay.
the company they have built over so many years is valued close to 100, 150 crores now, right?
Okay.
And now imagine what happens to that company when they get access to growth capital through the markets. The promoter is not just raising funds, they're accelerating the expansion plan of the company, unlocking value for the business, and simultaneously they are
Correct.
creating wealth for themselves as well and the other stakeholders of the company, right? Earlier छोटी कंपनीज के लिए, आई वुड से स्मॉल एंड मिड साइज कंपनीज के लिए इंडिया में ये एक्सेसिबल नहीं थी अपॉर्चुनिटीज. But today, the domestic participation in capital markets has increased so much, and the ecosystem has evolved significantly. There's a much larger window of opportunity available for growing companies, right? And that's
Okay.
where I think the SME ecosystem becomes very exciting. And
Okay.
people often focus on large mainboard IPOs because they're more visible, right? The issue sizes are so big,
Correct.
and they are more publicly visible. But India is
Correct.
not just a few hundred large corporates, right? There are lakhs of emerging businesses as well. And
Correct.
while 10 large IPOs, mainboard IPOs individually are bigger than 100, 150 SME IPOs, in the long run, the volume and the breadth of participation matters massively for
Correct.
development of capital markets.
Absolutely agree. Even the PE-backed IPOs which are coming up are now providing options to a lot of investors to take stakes in new age businesses, which earlier
Correct.
were not available to a lot of people. Valuation aside, individual call, but still they have an opportunity to at least participate in the journey of such businesses. Very well laid, Parva, very well laid. So I would like to conclude with the final question, correct? To all the career enthusiasts who want to make a solid investment banking career, right? What would be your general advice and what would be a general career path that you think they should follow in order to build a sustainable, strong banking career?
So I think if I just summarize the entire conversation we just had, that will be my advice to people who want to enter into the industry, right?
Okay.
So I think if you want to enter, the first thing is to have the technical foundation built properly right in your educational stage when you're just
Correct.
an undergrad. If
Correct.
you get access to learning the skill set that you will be applying when you have that role,
Correct.
that makes a very huge difference. So let's say someone who has the technical knowledge at the start of the job versus someone who does not, the growth trajectory both the people will see is going to be a comparing it's like comparing apples with oranges, right?
Correct. Correct.
And once you have entered the industry, for all the freshers out there, I think you guys need to you know put in effort. Like I said, you need to you will be grilled, and you need to understand that grilling, that particular phase of your corporate professional journey is
Correct.
going to be the most important part, because that is where you learn the most in the least amount of time.
Correct.
And they need to keep themselves updated about what's
Oh,
happening in the industry, right?
correct.
Because in the long run, if you want to grow exponentially, that is
Correct.
something which is going to help you a lot.
Correct. Okay. So if I summarize, okay, first they need to build their technical foundation along with their undergraduation. Then, as we discussed earlier, they will have to enter the industry as trainee. Correct. Then get themselves mature as an analyst associate. Correct. Then I think the VP or above level positions would require a post graduation also in this industry. So then they can go for, after gaining 2 years of work experience, for a solid post grad, and then come back into the industry at a senior position. Is this
Yeah, I
pathway
think
correct?
Yeah, you're completely right. I just want to highlight that this is one of the ways. There
Okay.
are people who
Okay.
like to start their career after going to, let's say, Ivy League schools and coming back with their business degrees.
Okay.
There are people who start at a mid-level or a back-end role in the investment banking industry, and gradually, with experience, they get a desirable role in the
Okay.
front-end industry, right? But it's
Okay.
just my point of view that if you want to accelerate your trajectory, right, your growth trajectory, this worked out for me very well. And I think
Okay.
it's going to work out for you as well. If you're just a 12th pass out or an undergrad student, you can
Okay.
definitely build a strong foundation for yourself before you enter into the industry. And when you enter the industry at such a young age, you
Correct.
also get a lot more opportunities.
Okay.
By that I mean you have more years over other people, and that
Oh,
experience does matter a lot.
okay. Okay. So let's imagine um few of the students who are brilliantly smart, correct? They get to enter the Ivy League, right? They might get an opportunity to work somewhere, correct? फाइट है बेसिकली फ्रेश एंड अंडरग्रेड साइड का करेक्ट पोस्ट ग्रेड टॉप आईएम में पहुंच जाओ तो ऑब्वियसली फाइट नहीं है यार आपको कोई ना कोई अच्छा मिलेगा करेक्ट बट मेन भीड़ है फ्रेश एंड अंडरग्रेड साइड पे करेक्ट एक अच्छे एमबीए कॉलेज आईवी द वर्ड दैट यूज पहुंचने के लिए पहली बात चाहिए एक प्रोफाइल बिना
Correct.
प्रोफाइल कॉलेज भी शॉर्टलिस्ट नहीं करते राइट
That is very right. Yes.
मैं एक पीछे अब प्रोफाइल बनाने के लिए पहले कॉर्पोरेट एक्सपोजर चाहिए करेक्ट
Yes.
अब अगर एक अंडर ग्रेड चलो टेक्निकल स्किल्स डेवलप भी करता है करेक्ट सो इट इज दैट चिकन एंड एग प्रॉब्लम वंस अगेन
Correct.
चलो लॉट ऑफ
Correct.
पीपल डू जो उनका हो जाएगा जो नहीं करता वो खुद भी हजार तरीके हैं करने के टेक्निकल स्किल्स बिल्ड कर भी लिया इफ समवन इज लाइक यू थ्रू अ प्रॉपर चैनल फिनविच प्रोग्राम उसका कैंपस वगैरह होता है ही डजंट हैव एन हेडेक बट जो जनरल पीपल है बस अप्लाई कैसे करें ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम्स के लिए it is so difficult to get your application shortlisted for the interview. Forget about cracking the interview. वहां पे what you will suggest to other people who are not pursuing Finbridge program but still are interested to make a career in IBAN.
See,
Best advice, चाहे वो कितनी भी hard हो, but what will be the honest advice?
I think it will be a reality check for people, but I think um, so. I'll give you a very good example. Right, I'm 21. I am working in the industry for the
One right now. I thought you are oh excellent. Go ahead, beta.
So I'm working in industry for the last 2.5, 3 years, I think, and that experience has taught me a lot.
Correct.
compared to someone who starts their journey after having some corporate exposure and then getting into a business school and then entering into core finance roles, right? They'll be starting their careers outside the age of what, 24, 25-ish at the best case scenario.
24.
So
Ah,
when they'll be
yes.
starting their careers, someone who has started building that foundation at such a young age will already have a half a decade of experience on them, right? And like I said, that experience matters a lot more.
Correct.
For people who are not pursuing a channel like Finbridge program,
Correct.
um, what needs to be done is you need to work on your technical knowledge, you need to work on your communication skills, you need to work on the way you articulate yourself better, right? All of these things, along with preparing for all those rigorous interviews in investment banking, and then without the first hand knowledge of all those technical concepts,
Correct.
you will be entering into the domain, then you will learn things while you are on the job, and that itself will slow down your career trajectory a lot, right? I'm not
Okay.
saying there's a right way or a wrong way. Things that worked out for me, I'm just going to talk about them, right?
So if you can slightly list down top five technical things that people need to learn in order to increase their probability of clearing the trainee round for a IBAN. Just five top technical things.
Okay, so firstly, one skill that you need to develop is, like I said, being very much aware about what's happening, right?
Oh,
All the deals, all the activity, all the industries, all the government regulations and help and push downs, all of those things. That is one, you need to be up to date about them.
correct.
Second would be you need to learn about the type of technical skills
Okay.
that are specific to each segment of the core finance roles, right? You need to learn about how to evaluate a business. Have
Okay.
you learned that you need to understand how financial statements work, how each type of industry will have different types of financial statements, asset heavy businesses, asset light businesses. There are thousands of examples that I could give right now, but
Right.
you understand that when you have applied and learned about it, right?
Correct.
So that is something. So your financial modeling skills, valuation skills, and your business learning skills. That is
Correct.
something you need to read about as many businesses as you could, so that when you come across a company when you're working, you're able to pinpoint those points by which you can create the equity story for the business, right? From an investment banker's point of view, what
Correct.
we do is we try to sell the business to investors, right? How do we do that? We articulate a equity story for the business. We need to make sure that when an investor is looking at that presentation, that information memorandum, they are able to understand the problem the company is solving, how they are
Correct.
solving, how they are solving it the best,
Correct.
and they are doing it in the most optimal manner,
Correct.
right? And their money is going to grow.
Correct.
Right. So this is a basically an equity story, and this is something they need to people need to
Oh,
understand, which is very important in investment banking. Next, I
okay.
would say your softer skills. Softer skills are very important in investment banking. It's a relationship-driven industry. You
Correct.
need to be able to speak. You need to be able to communicate your thoughts properly. You need to be
Correct.
able to speak to people
Correct.
who have built thousands of crores worth of businesses, and they should be listening to you because you know much, right?
Correct.
So I would
Correct.
say these are some technical skills that people need to work on if they want to break into investment banking.
Okay. I think it was a fantastic session, Parva. Correct. To the point. I think it is broadly an hour. I can take an hour more, but I think then only you and I would listen to the podcast and not others. But thank you so much, Beta, for taking out time and sharing qualitative, authentic information. A lot of students are interested in investment banking today, and I'm sure this will do wonders for their career if they actually absorb every bit of essence that you spoke. And seeing you today at this age, uh, teaching the world about the dominance you entered. Again, as I said, the words would be short to summarize what you have achieved. And I just hope that you continue and you become one of the greatest investment bankers the country has ever seen. Very proud. And thank you so much for your time, Peter. Thank you.
No worries, sir. The pleasure was mine, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.